The world can be a very strange place, can't it? Full of beautiful moments, yes, but also filled with secrets, the kinds that hide in plain sight, just under the surface of our everyday lives. Sometimes, the most shocking truths are buried in the very people we trust the most. That's a lesson that a woman named Elara came to learn, in the most painful way imaginable. Elara wasn't a detective or a spy or some kind of super genius. She was a librarian, a quiet, gentle soul with a love for old books and the smell of rain. She had a husband, Daniel, a kind man with calloused hands from years of woodworking, and a little girl, Lily, with a laugh like wind chimes. They lived in a small, cozy home nestled on a quiet street in a suburb of Ohio, the kind of place where nothing ever seemed to go wrong. Their life was, by all accounts, perfect, a postcard of a life. Elara had a close relationship with her family. Her father, a stoic but loving man, had passed away a few years prior, leaving her mother, Evelyn, to live alone in the old family home. Elara visited Evelyn every Sunday for lunch, a ritual that had been in place for as long as she could remember. Evelyn was a woman who seemed to be carved from granite, a woman who had weathered every storm life had thrown at her with a stiff upper lip and a cold, unwavering gaze. She wasn't a woman of grand gestures or effusive affection, but Elara always knew her mother loved her in her own reserved way. Evelyn had been a single mother, a widow from a young age, and she had raised Elara with a fierce, almost obsessive dedication. She taught Elara to be strong, to be independent, to never rely on anyone else. These were the lessons Elara lived by, but something had always felt off, like a single misplaced note in an otherwise perfect symphony. Elara had always been curious about her family history. She knew her father had been a quiet man, an artist who painted landscapes that captured the raw beauty of the Midwest. She knew her mother had been a schoolteacher, but when she would ask about her birth, about her own earliest days, her mother would become distant, evasive. A wall would come up, a thick, impenetrable shield that Elara could never get past. Evelyn would always change the subject or say, "That's in the past, Elara. There's no point in dwelling on it." Elara, a respectful and dutiful daughter, would always drop it. But the question, the nagging feeling, never left. The first crack in that perfect postcard of a life appeared on a Tuesday. Elara was cleaning out her mother's attic, helping her prepare for a garage sale. The attic was a dusty, forgotten time capsule, filled with old furniture, yellowed photographs, and boxes of forgotten memories. In a large, unlabeled trunk, wedged behind an old rocking horse, Elara found a small, locked wooden box. It wasn't a fancy box, just a simple, unadorned thing with a brass clasp. Curiosity, that insatiable beast, took over. She rummaged through her mother's things until she found a small key on a dusty keychain. It fit the lock perfectly. Inside the box, nestled on a bed of faded velvet, were two things: a single, delicate baby's bracelet with the name Charlotte etched on it, and a stack of old, handwritten letters. The letters were not from her father. They were signed Grace. The paper was thin, the ink faded, but the words were sharp, piercing. They were letters from a young woman, full of desperation and fear. They spoke of a baby, a secret, and a promise. A promise made to Evelyn. One of the letters, dated a few weeks after Elara's own birthday, was particularly chilling. It read, "Evelyn, I'm so sorry. I know you said you'd take her, but I can't do it. I can't live with the lie. I have to come back for my daughter." Elara's world tilted on its axis. Her mind, a place of order and catalogued information, was suddenly thrown into chaos. Who was Charlotte? Who was Grace? Why would her mother have these letters? And most importantly, what was the lie? She felt a cold dread settle in her stomach, a feeling she had never experienced before. It was the feeling of a ground she thought was solid turning to quicksand beneath her feet. She put the letters and the bracelet back in the box, locked it, and put it back where she found it. She didn't confront her mother immediately. She needed time to process, to think. She felt a deep, profound sense of betrayal, but it was mixed with a confusing, almost unbearable sadness. The woman who had raised her, who had been her rock, her unwavering North Star, had been hiding something, and that something felt monstrous. The next time she saw her mother, Elara couldn't look her in the eye. The perfect postcard of a life had been ripped in half, and the two jagged edges were all she had left. The days that followed were a blur of questions without answers. Elara felt like she was living in a movie, a suspense film where the protagonist has stumbled upon a dark truth that everyone else is either unaware of or complicit in. The letters from Grace haunted her. She read them again and again when her mother wasn't around, the faded ink and a desperate tone burning into her memory. The most recent letters were more frantic. "Please, Evelyn, just one more visit. I just need to hold her. And then, you took her. You took my baby and you won't give her back. This is a crime." Elara felt a terrible knot tighten in her gut. Her mother, the woman who had always been her protector, her guide, was she a kidnapper? The thought was so absurd, so monstrous, that her mind recoiled from it. And the name Charlotte. Who was Charlotte? Was she the baby Grace was writing about? Was Elara not who she thought she was? She decided she had to find out. She started her own investigation, a quiet, secretive quest that she couldn't even share with her husband, Daniel. How could she look at the man she loved and say, "The woman who raised me might have stolen me from my real mother"? The words were too heavy, too unbelievable. Her first stop was the city's public records office. Elara, with her librarian's mind, knew how to find things. She dug through birth records from the year she was born, looking for any mention of a Grace or a Charlotte. It was a slow, painstaking process. She found dozens of Graces, dozens of Charlottes, but none of the information seemed to line up. The parents' names were all different. The birth dates were wrong. It was a dead end. Her next move was more personal. She began to ask her mother subtle questions, a delicate dance of conversation she had never had to perform before. "Mom, did you ever have a close friend named Grace?" she'd ask casually over Sunday lunch. Evelyn's face would become a mask of stone. "No, I don't think so." "Why?" she'd snap, her voice a little too sharp. "Oh, I don't know," Elara would say, forcing a nonchalant shrug. "The name just popped into my head." The more questions she asked, the more evasive and irritable her mother became. Evelyn's once cold demeanor turned to icy defensiveness, and Elara knew she was getting close to something. One evening, while Elara was visiting, Evelyn went to the basement to get something. Elara, her heart pounding in her chest, saw her chance. She crept into the living room and went to the bookshelf, where she knew her mother kept her most personal documents. Tucked behind a large, leather-bound volume of Shakespeare, she found a small, worn photo album. She opened it, her hands trembling. It was filled with old black-and-white photos of her mother, looking young and happy, a stark contrast to the hardened woman she knew. But then she saw it, a series of photos from what looked like a summer camp or a retreat. In one photo, her mother was standing arm in arm with another young woman, a striking woman with fiery red hair and a spray of freckles across her nose. And under the photo, in her mother's neat handwriting, was a caption, "Evelyn and Grace, 1965. The pieces of the puzzle were finally starting to fit together, but they formed a picture more horrifying than Elara could have imagined. Grace was a real person. She was a friend of her mother's. The letters, the baby, the dark secrets, it all suddenly felt terrifyingly real. Elara's mind raced. Her mother, a schoolteacher, a pillar of the community, had a dark past. She was capable of something so unspeakable. But why? Why would she do this? The only thing she could think of was desperation. Perhaps Grace was in a bad situation. Perhaps she couldn't take care of the baby. But if that was the case, why the letters? Why the fear? The desperation? Elara felt a wave of nausea wash over her. She took a photo of the picture on her phone, then quickly put the album back, her heart hammering against her ribs. She couldn't breathe. She had to talk to her mother. The truth, when it came, didn't arrive with a dramatic flourish or a shocking revelation shouted in a moment of anger. It came in a whisper, A broken confession from a woman who had carried a lie for a lifetime. Elara had to force it out of her. After she returned from her mother's house with the photo of Grace, she couldn't sleep. The image of the two young women, smiling and carefree, was a sharp contrast to the cold, distant relationship her mother now had with her. Elara finally decided to confront her directly. She drove back to her mother's house the next day, her hands gripping the steering wheel so tightly her knuckles were white. When she walked through the door, the air was thick with unspoken tension. "Mom," Elara said, her voice shaking slightly. "Who is Grace?" Evelyn froze. She was in the kitchen, wiping down the counters, a ritual of her daily life. She stopped, her hands still, and slowly turned to face Elara. Her face was ashen. "I don't know what you're talking about," she said, her voice barely a whisper. "Don't lie to me," Elara said, the words coming out in a rush. "I found the letters, and I found a picture of you with a woman named Grace. The letters, they talk about a baby. They talk about me, don't they?" Evelyn sank into a kitchen chair, her body suddenly looking small and fragile. She looked at Elara, her eyes filled with a pain so deep and ancient it made Elara's heart ache. The granite exterior had finally cracked. "Elara, you were a baby," she began, her voice hoarse with emotion. I gave birth to you in secret." Elara's world shattered. "What? No, Dad, my father. What about him?" "Your father, he wasn't your father," Evelyn said, the words catching in her throat. "He was my husband, but he wasn't your father. He was a good man, he knew, and he loved you like his own. But your father, he was a married man, powerful man in this town. It was a mistake, a terrible, horrible mistake." Elara felt her head spin. The lie was deeper than she had ever imagined. But the letters? The name Charlotte? Grace? Evelyn's face crumpled. Tears began to stream down her cheeks, a sight Elara had never seen before. Grace. She was my best friend. She was pregnant too, with the same man. We were both pregnant with his children at the same time. He was a monster. He told us both he loved us. We didn't know about each other. Elara's mind reeled. Two women, both pregnant by the same man. A sick, twisted web of deceit. But what does that have to do with me? With Charlotte? Evelyn took a deep, shuddering breath. Grace. She couldn't keep her baby. She wanted to give her away. She was in a bad place, a dangerous place. I was supposed to take her baby, and she was supposed to keep hers. But when your father found out I was pregnant with a child that wasn't his, he was furious. He said he would leave me if I didn't get rid of the baby. Couldn't do it. You were my child. I couldn't give you away. The horrifying truth, the full, sickening weight of it, finally landed on Elara. So you gave him Grace's baby instead? You gave her your friend's daughter to pass off as your own? No, Evelyn cried out, her voice filled with anguish. No, that's not it. Grace gave birth and she died during childbirth. It was a horrible complication. She asked me to take care of her baby, to raise her, but couldn't. I had my own baby to worry about, my own life. I was a single mother. I couldn't raise two babies. I gave her away. I gave her to a couple I knew who desperately wanted a baby, a couple who could give her a good home. I told them she was my niece, from a family tragedy. Elara felt the blood drain from her face. Her mother, her loving, protective mother, had given away a baby, her best friend's baby. And the letters? She whispered. The letters from Grace? Grace! She didn't die, Evelyn said, her voice a cracked whisper. She survived. She came looking for her baby. She found me. I told her I didn't know what she was talking about. I told her the baby had died. She never stopped looking, and she never stopped writing to me. She swore she'd tell the world what I did. The silence in the room was deafening. The lie, the terrible, monstrous lie, was not about her. It was about another baby, a baby given away by her own grandmother. Elara was not the child who had been stolen. She was the child who had been kept. And the other child, the one named Charlotte, was out there somewhere, given away by her own grandmother. The final piece of the story was the hardest to bear. It wasn't just a tale of two women and a shared betrayal. It was a story of a lie that had festered for decades, a lie that had created a ghost in the family tree. The baby bracelet with the name Charlotte was real. The letters from Grace, full of grief and desperation, were real. And the woman who had kept this terrible secret was Elara's own grandmother, Evelyn. The weight of this revelation was a physical thing, a crushing pressure on Elara's chest. She had gone looking for a mystery about her own past, only to find a far more horrifying one about someone else's. Evelyn, with the dam of her secrecy finally broken, told Elara everything. After Grace survived the birth of her baby, she had been consumed with finding her daughter. She tried everything, from hiring a private detective to showing up at Evelyn's home unannounced, her face etched with a frantic desperation. Evelyn, in her fear and her own brand of misguided protection, had pushed her away, each time with a more elaborate lie. The letters stopped abruptly one day, and Evelyn, with a heavy heart, assumed Grace had given up. But she never stopped wondering. She never stopped looking over her shoulder. She never stopped carrying the guilt. Elara was left with a chilling new reality. She wasn't just Elara, the librarian from Ohio. She was the daughter of a woman who had kept a monstrous secret, a secret that had led to another woman's lifelong search for her child. And somewhere out there was Charlotte, her mother's half-sister, living a life unaware of the family that had abandoned her. The question was, what was Elara supposed to do with this truth? How could she live with this knowledge, this shared burden with her mother? The answer was simple, and yet the most difficult thing she had ever had to do. She had to find Charlotte. She used the same meticulous research skills that had served her so well as a librarian. This time, she wasn't just looking for birth records. She was looking for an adopted woman, born in the same year as her, with the name Charlotte on a baby bracelet. She started with the adoption records in the county where her mother lived, but it was a dead end. The records were sealed. So she broadened her search using online genealogical databases and social media. She posted on forums for adopted people looking for their birth families. She shared her story, carefully, without revealing any names or specific details. A story about a baby girl named Charlotte. A story about a secret. A story about a long-lost sister. The response was overwhelming. A sea of stories from people who were also looking for their own truths. And then, one day, she got a message. The woman's name was Caroline. She was the same age as Elara, and she had been adopted from Ohio. Her birth parents were unknown, but her adoptive parents had told her that she was the daughter of a family friend, a woman who had given her away to a better life. And then, she said something that made Elara's blood run cold. She said she had a small wooden box, a simple, unadorned thing with a brass clasp, that her adoptive parents had given her when she was old enough. Inside was a single, delicate baby's bracelet with the name Charlotte etched on it. The connection was too powerful to be a coincidence. Elara and Caroline, two strangers, born from two mothers, but connected by a single, dark lie. They met for coffee, two women who were now sisters, bound not by blood, but by a shared history of betrayal and secrecy. The reunion was an emotional maelstrom, a whirlwind of tears, questions, and a profound sense of relief. Caroline, now a successful architect, had always felt like a piece of her was missing. And Elara, who had always felt a strange sense of unease about her own life, finally understood why. They were two halves of a story that was now finally complete. The lie was exposed, and the truth, no matter how painful, was finally out in the open. And so the story ends, not with a dramatic climax, but with a quiet, profound resolution. Elara and Caroline, two sisters who were given away at birth, not by their mothers, but by their own grandmother. It's a story that reminds us that secrets, no matter how deeply buried, will always find a way to the surface. It's a testament to the power of truth and the enduring bond of family, no matter how broken and fragmented it may be. If this story touched you, If it made you think about the secrets that might be hidden in your own family tree, then I want you to do me a favor. Take a moment to think about the people you love. Tell them you love them. And maybe, just maybe, ask them a question or two. Because sometimes the most important stories are the ones we haven't heard yet. And if you want to hear more stories like this, stories that will make you question everything you thought you knew, then make sure to hit that like button, subscribe to the channel, and turn on the notification bell so you don't miss a single one. Thank you for watching.